Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the VIBE Edu Podcast. We are talking about why PD isn't working the way it is right now and how we can shift to make it better. So, the last time we were talking about, pouring into your teachers, respecting them, creating a safe space for them, just allowing them time. And I've been talking to teachers in my community, teachers over on the gram in our Facebook group, and I know that everything that I know that everything that we've been saying is really resonating with you, and that makes me so happy. So I wanted to start off, if you guys are okay. I want to start off with a takeaway. So this is a teacher in my community, a brilliant educator, and she wrote, I really want administrators to know that they need to listen to what we care about, to add follow-up coaching, hold teachers accountable to actually doing it, all caps. Change doesn't happen when it's optional. And I was like, that's a mic drop moment right there. I love that. So, TJ, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to talk about the moment that it shifted.
Hmm.
Some PD that we had that was super good because last time we started with PD that was horrible. And then we got into some strategies for making it better. But I think we could talk about the moment that it shifted for us, whether it was when we were teachers or administrators, to making PD different and better for the staff.
Cool.
So, who
You want
wants
me
to
to
go
start?
first?
I will. Ladies first.
Ladies first.
Um, so it's interesting. I have had a lot of really good PD. And I think, though, the moment where everything shifted for me was when I actually delivered PD. And it was a moment
Mm.
where I was standing up there and we were talking about behaviors, and everybody's having these big eye-opening, like aha moments going, oh, that's why the kids are, the way they are these days, those kids. And I looked out and there was a teacher that was crying. And I stopped everything. And I was like, hold on. And I'm already connected to so many teachers, right? And so having that connection allowed her to go, okay, yeah, I want to talk about this in front of probably, there had to been over 50 teachers in the room.
Wow.
And she was like, I'm pretty sure that you're talking about a kid like my son, like my kid at home. This is
Right.
what's happening with my child. And I'm having these major moments where, like, I get it now. And instead of being so frustrated with my child at home, I can now come from a different place, a different perspective, and go, okay, this stuff isn't just for my classroom and for my students, but it's for me and it's for him. And I have had so many more moments like that. But I think it's because connection is like my superpower. We were talking about my community before we even started recording, and you guys were like, wow, they're actually talking about the podcast, like they're listening, they're talking to you. And I was like, of course they are, because they feel connected. And I think when you feel a sense of connection and openness, then you're able to receive the new learning and put things into practice. So I don't know. I always lead with feeling and connection when I give professional development. I get to the heart of the matter, but I also want people to leave with action. And so I don't know. That's the best.
Hmm.
All right, I'll
Yeah, it's
jump in.
interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Well, so for me, the shift happened when I was a teacher trying to become an administrator. So I was very young in my leadership journey. I didn't have a leadership title. In fact, I was a teacher and an athletic coach at the time. And during staff meetings, where do athletic coaches typically end up? In the back, not paying attention, goofing off. And I pretty much was the same as I was as
You
a
hear that,
student
coaches?
growing up. Yeah, no, I'm
We
generalizing,
got our
and everyone's
eyes on
probably
you.
everyone's shaking their head on the screen for those who are listening on the audio platforms. But so I got pulled aside by my assistant principal and was like, "Look, you want to be a leader. There's a perception that goes along with that. You don't need to be in the back. You don't need to be goofing around. You need to be in the front." And I was very transparent and I had a good relationship with my assistant principal. And I was like, well, because the PD sucks and I don't get anything from it and it's not worth my time. And the assistant principal said, so what are you going to do about it when you are in this position? And that was kind of that light bulb moment of like, that's right. Because I do eventually, or I will eventually have that power to make the plans for PD and a way to mix it up and use some of the strategies that we talked about last week in our episode, as far as, okay, if I'm bored out of my mind and I don't think this is valuable, then what can I do as an administrator to make that shift and that change so that way it is engaging, it is relevant. Everyone there sees the purpose and the value of it, and that's going to hopefully not only be engaging and something that they're a part of, but also something that they then take away and, to your point, Kim, use it in their classroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating that you had that experience like that, Josh, because I have a very similar experience when I was a teacher. And I wasn't goofing off or in the back of the room, but I did go to the principal and say, this PD is just not landing, man. People aren't paying attention. She was so sharp. Right away, she said, all right, well, then I just created a position and you're the professional development chair. We will no longer do anything unless the team of people who you put together to be on that committee say so. And I was like,
Awesome.
wow, that's an incredible responsibility to have. But it really taught me a lot about listening to a group of teachers
Yeah.
who wanted to be developed and what they wanted. So it was like a think tank on what kind of PD we should be putting on, and then what the budget was to get in whatever group we needed. So suppose we wanted to do executive functioning, we would do the research, we'd find Mitch Weathers, and then we would hire Mitch to do the PD. So that
Yes,
was
sir.
like a shift moment for me. But I'll also share, I got to be a part of the Yale National Institute for Teachers, and it was like a total pampering experience.
Mm.
They really treated us well, like literally like wine and cheese in the evening. And like it was just totally like a the opposite of what you think about cafeteria PD and dump and run. So I just loved that experience, the Yale National Institute for Teachers. And it makes me think about how can we make this like fun and cool. And you can't do wine and cheese, but you can do donuts and coffee, and you can do other things in a school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but VIBE EDU on August 1st.
We can do wine and cheese. Is that what you're
Yes,
about
we
to say?
can. Straight
I'll be there. I'm coming now.
Straight past hors d'oeuvres and wine and beer for your VIP people for the first hour. TJ, just saying, get your butt there, because that's how teachers, that's how educators, that's how administrators should be treated. Normal, with respect, and come in, and it's going to be a lovely evening, right? Evening, not even during the day. No round tables, no stale slide decks, like zero. Treat the people like royalty. You absolutely deserve to feel that way. And that is why I created VIBE EDU that way, but I also run my teacher retreats that way. That's how I've always done the Bloom. It's just, it needs to feel good. And that, like, I love that you said that. Yes. Amen to that.
Well,
Hey, Kim,
I
do you
also
know
will
who I
say
get to be a panel with? I get to be
Mitch
with
Weathers.
Mitch Weathers.
In the flesh.
The Mitch Weathers.
Yeah,
Maybe with a beer in hand, it sounds like.
You got to throw an article in front of that. The thing about that, though, Kim, I will say too, is you don't send like the slackers to that.
No.
Like you have to send your best people. It's why we wrote invest in your best. Like it's an investment. It's sometimes more expensive. Not everybody gets to go to things like that. But what comes from it, though, for whoever you send and they come back, is that shift. So they can then influence their peers and influence the leaders in a way that says, hey, I had this PD experience. It was totally different than what we do here. Let me give you a couple of like stories about what we might be able to do here back on our home soil. So that's the movement. The shift happens for one person. It's like the dancer on the hill, right? Eventually everybody's dancing.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Okay, Mitch, what's your shift?
I'll piggyback on TJ a little bit with, so the school I spent most of my career teaching, it's kind of a stone's throw to Stanford University. And so we had a really tight partnership with STEP, Stanford Teacher Education Program. And so more than my involvement, but like student teachers being placed at my school. And like most of that was happening with Stanford, just proximity made sense. And we were a big, large diverse Title I urban public high school. And so it was great for secondary teachers. And then once organized binder evolved and I started doing PD, and it was also piggybacking TJ, my principal came to me. And interestingly enough, a friend of mine, still a good friend of mine, we were tapped with, hey, there's things going on in your classroom. Let's start internal. You guys lead PD about the programming you've designed. And he had this really cool thing he did the first month of the school year, and mine was, of course, executive function and organized binder. But I mentioned Stanford because the imposter syndrome with my own staff, of course, there's nothing more intimidating, right? Like 50 miles makes a prophet or an expert, and here I am, like 5 feet down the hall, presenting to everyone that I am with every day. But the difference with the first time I was invited to Stanford to present, it was always at the end of the school year, and they would bring me in. I'm assuming other people too, but it wasn't like a event. It was just a standalone professional development talk kind of thing. And it would be at the end of the school year. And I remember just thinking like, oh my gosh, like this is Stanford. The same thing happened a couple weeks ago at the Cambridge University conference in Miami, right? I'm there. The opening keynote is about, it's a professor, Sarah Baker. She's amazing. She did this great keynote on executive functions in the little, and I'm up next on the same stage. It's a breakout session, but and just like, why am I here? And all of that to say, like, what's shifted is, even though I might get nervous or feel like full imposter syndrome, I have to just go lean into what's practical and what's worked, right? If you're a teacher, any educator, and you get that privilege of teaching educators, what you are going to talk about better be, it better work, especially if it's something you've created. Like, it can't just be like, oh, I get the stage, I get the mic. Like, there's gravity to that. There's a responsibility. At least that's how I approach it. And so in all of those instances, I just had to lean in and be like, just be you and talk about it. And what's interesting is how these students who there's at that time, and TJ, you might be tuned into this more than me, but it was between Stanford and Harvard. There was like this cage match of who's the number one school of ed in the country. And all these students would come up afterwards privately and be like, oh my gosh, this is the most important thing I've learned in the entire year that I've been here, like quietly like that. And I'd be like, yeah, well, good, take it, go. It'll help, And the same thing happened in Cambridge. And I'm just going to read a quote because this is what sums it up. And one of the first times I ever got to train a school, this middle school teacher wrote this back to me, and I've always saved it as a reminder. It says, organized binder has seen and has taken action on what so many teachers tend to overlook. Students' lives outside of school are unknown. Students who do not know how to be, act, and or learn like a student don't know how because they haven't learned it yet. Not only did you take note of this, but you came up with a way to change it. And that I don't mean that as like, yeah, just like the change part is just practical. I have to that was the shift for me. I was tired of sitting through professional learning experiences, whatever they are. And it's just like, what do we, even if it's inspiring, but what am I going to do with this? I really take a lot of pride in saying, you can go tomorrow. You may not implement all of these strategies we're talking about, but you can pick a few. You can pick one and start tomorrow. Yep. Let's see how it works. So that was the shift for me.
Oh, that's so good. It's so funny. Like, I'm learning more and more about all of our experiences and going, well, of course, these are why I feel this way about you guys, because we all have very similar experiences. And I love what you said about it's practical and it's action, right? The very, very next day. And I know that's what teachers in my community too were saying about the stuff that I was giving them. It's the same thing, but that imposter syndrome, that's a real thing too. I mean, I definitely remember like one of my very first times I ever kind of started speaking out about the stuff I was doing in my classroom. It's called Nerd Camp. And I was like, sure, I'll go to Nerd Camp. Like, sure, I'll go. I had no idea what it was going to be about, no clue what this conference was or whatever. And we showed up and they were like, they had like signups. And I was like, wait, I'm going to be speaking? Like, no, no, no. I came to listen. I'm not coming to speak. I don't speak. I don't speak. And my friend was like, no, Kim, you just need to go up there and you need to talk about what you're doing in your classroom. She's like, you have to. And I was like, okay, whatever. I was so scared, like literally scared shitless. I walked up there to like the front of the auditorium. It was like an auditorium. You're supposed to like give your pitch, right? Like a 30-second pitch about what you're going to talk about. And I just talked from my heart. I was like, listen, behaviors are crazy and I totally get it. And I'm doing some things in my classroom that I think are really going to help. And it's like a mindset shift thing. It's like a little bit of executive functioning. It's some behavior type stuff. And I had this group show up in this little room at this school. It's the school where they filmed 90210. That's really why I went. That's really why I went. Not because it's called Nerd Camp. I wanted to.
I think you're nerding out on 90210, Kim.
Nerd.
Nerd alert.
This is a Beverly Hills school, right?
Yes. So
Nice.
I was in the room, this tiny little room, and I started talking. I think we had like 30 minutes, and there were a couple girls that were in there, and of course I'm like, giving them my gram, my handle on the gram, Mitch. And these girls afterwards, must have been a year and a half later, I had never seen these girls except, they'd slide into my DMs every once in a while or whatever. Long story short, their school ended up hiring me the second I created my business when I was in Texas. They hired me and said to their principal, we got to get this girl. And what was I talking about? I was just talking about the stuff that I was doing in my classroom, and they were able to take action right after. So yeah, I think it's the action. That's the biggest thing for me.
I think that's also a really important part of lifelong learning. So tend to think of lifelong learning as learning something for yourself, and that's good. Like if you're in that stage, that's great. But the other part of lifelong learning is providing for others. And you learn so much when you have to distill and curate what you do and then communicate it effectively enough for somebody else to be able to turnkey and have that be transferable. And I think this show, there's a lot of people on this show who are listening. The audience is listening to learn, but I also think what you did, Kim, is you gave them license to also help others and to be in front of other groups of educators to pour into the profession in a way that they might not be doing because of an imposter syndrome, or I'm not there yet, or that's not me, or I'm a classroom teacher, not a PD provider. I think if we all think of ourselves as learners and PD providers, I think it changes the culture. That happened for me about the 100th time they walked 10 administrators in the back of my room when I was a teacher. And I'm like, the kids were like, every time some group comes to this school,
come to your class.
They come to your class. Aren't you nervous about that? And I'm like, you know what? Not anymore. And they're like, what are they doing here? And I'm like, you know what? They never told me. I have no idea. They just march these people in. They stand there with their clipboards and then they march out. It was before iPads and all the other stuff, So that gave me license to be in front of groups.
Yeah, but TJ, I want to say too, on the flip side, as leaders, I think we need to give license to folks in the classrooms to have a voice in PD, and to flip it on its head as far as what Kim was feeling, right? Oh, I'm just a teacher. How many times have we heard that over our span as educators or PD providers? And for myself, like I know I felt that way. I felt like, okay, I feel like I'm making progress on my classroom. My students are, being successful, but I don't feel like I have validity to share what I'm doing to other people. At the time, I was a pretty young teacher. I was only in the classroom for 6 years before I went into administration. So, even that 6 year, I didn't really feel confident as far as telling other people what to do in their classroom. But as an administrator, I wanted to empower those who were on my campus. I didn't want silos. I didn't want people to do phenomenal things in the classroom that I got to observe, and then no one else knew it was going on. And so for me, what I created was this program called Creative Corner, and where every month we'd have one session, and it was a teacher teaching other teachers about a strategy that was occurring in the classroom or some form of technology, and it was completely voluntary. But every time I had at least half the staff that showed up. Why? Because they were hungry to learn from others. And no one ever knew that until there was an opportunity and a platform that was presented to them. I didn't pay them to go after school to go for an extra 45 minutes. It was them wanting to learn, coming in, and it wasn't from an administrator, it wasn't from a high top leader telling them they had to be there. It was just an opportunity for them to grow and to learn. And we also differentiated, which I talked about last time, where we had, hey, if you've used this program and you're advanced, come over here. If you've used it maybe a few times, you're in this group. If you've never experienced it, come over here, right? And then we had multiple facilitators, and it was this whole totally flipped on its head opportunity for folks. And they did get PD hours, so they got something from it. But again, it was just a platform for them to say, you are valued. The things that you are doing in your classroom are amazing, and please share it out to others for them to grow to.
Yeah, Josh, the neat thing about that for the audience, again, I think that's a nice tip. It's a nice takeaway. And by the way, you don't have to be the principal to do that. You can do Creative Corner as a teacher the second Tuesday of every month. We're going to come to room 212 and we're going to learn strategies from one another. And everybody's going to do a give one, get one. You're going to give a strategy that you use for this theme, and you're going to get a strategy that you can use. I also wanted to underscore what Mitch said earlier. Just implement one thing. Like, you're not going to learn 10 things today and do all 10 tomorrow. Just try. Just get one thing from this today and put it into practice tomorrow. Even if it's going to stink, you're one step further on your way to making progress towards excellence.
What we call them are jot sessions, just one thing, right? And when we start like a weaning process with a school or a school district, and we have our strong bison, we call them the bison leads, right? Have your bison leads open up their classrooms and do a jot session. Just one thing. That's it. Just one thing. And take the pressure off. If you are a lead bison, you just have to have a conversation, not a presentation. I do not want you spending hours putting together a slide deck for your colleagues. And it's really, really hard, you guys, for district leaders or coaches or TOSAs or whoever to get that out of their brain. It's really, really hard. They see it's got to be a slide deck. It's got to be a presentation. That's how we do PD. And every time, like, oh my God, please, it's conversations, not presentations. That's what I do. I walk in with nothing, you guys. Literally nothing. You hire me, I come with me, my body and my purse. Like, that's what it is. And I ask the teachers, I start with a conversation. What's going on? How are you feeling? And then shoom, 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 all the stuff comes out and we start with a conversation. Then I create a roadmap for us to go, right? Because this is what's going on. And we're going to start with just one thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mitch's
also
brain is turning.
Yeah, I'm like waiting for Mitch to say something. I'm like, Mitch is thinking.
Yeah. Well, I got two things I'm thinking of. One, I want to challenge anyone out there who has an idea that's become a strategy that's working in your classroom. We need you. And Kim, your story of starting your company, and same thing with me. I had no intention of that. I never wanted to leave the classroom. I still miss it. I was one of those people that's like, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. Like, this job is just awesome, you know? But it sometimes takes that entrepreneurial spirit. TJ that will resonate from our old mastermind together. But some of us are wired in a way to embrace that pull, that call, that small tug of like, well, this is really helping. And it takes the way I framed it for myself was I'm not changing anything. I'm just dropping the walls of my classroom and having a hopefully a larger influence, helping more students, because now I'm working with teachers. But what you did, Kim, was you took this risk and just stood up and raised your hand and said, like, I can come and help too. And if you don't do that, people who are listening, and you have that little tug, then the world doesn't get to hear and learn from what you've created or what you're doing, whatever that might be. So that edupreneur side, it is kind of scary, but nobody, if you don't stand up and raise your hand, nobody can ask you to come and talk to them. So that was one thing I was thinking. The other thing is I've always thought of this model, and I've never been a school leader, but if I was, what if you viewed your campus as a startup?
Mm.
Like a more, not a startup, but an incubator for startups. And every classroom was its own entrepreneurial um, experiment. Like, what's going on? I'm going into all these classes. Josh, you just said this, and you're like, that's amazing. Why are we so siloed? And we're siloed by definition, right? It's just how it is.
Yeah.
But how do you drop the walls? And not as an incubator to like, you're all going to start companies but for the ecosystem that is the school, right? And kind of what you created, Josh. I've always thought that'd be like a cool model and leaning into what teachers are already doing. Not that, I mean, here we're talking about PD and a lot of it is outside PD, and that's great too. But how do you create these little microcosms of creativity and sharing that and creating a culture? I loved this, TJ. I was the same way. Like people would just like, it was just an open door, like in my classroom. But we were trying to create that as a school culture. Like if somebody comes in your room, it's not an evaluation, it's not a judgment. Even if things are going crazy right now, it's not a reflection on you. It's just that's just what we do, right? And if you can, I think that allows for some of that cross-pollination and shared ideas, right? I remember one time I was doing something, big class, 36 lab going on, whatever, and I had like my back turned, not even paying attention, and my principal walked in, and I was like, "Hey," she's like, "Hey," and we just sat there and talked for like 5 minutes. I never looked at my class the whole time, and it was just that I think that was the routine and stuff we had established. But I think, yeah, just creating a culture that allows for that sharing of ideas and cross pollination is really powerful. And Josh, to your point too, like this was not mandated. Educators were all hungry for ideas and things that work, and it's interesting. And you're like, wow, some of the conversations before we hit record, which will be a future conversation.
Yep.
We're all kind of like fascinated by it. I mean, that's just who we are as human beings, as educators, I think. So,
Yeah, but I think there's also a wall that needs to be broken down as far as, what occurs in our classroom is our identity. And so since it's a part of us and who we are, if there is any negative feedback that is pushed our way, then sometimes it's like I take it personal versus looking at the strategy or the habit or, something I can do differently in my classroom. So as an administrator, to your point, Mitch, is like you do need to shift that culture. You need to break down those walls to say like, no, it's okay to try new things. It's okay for it not to go well. At least you tried it. And if it does work, then it's something you can adopt and it's something that you can continue every single time. And so I always was trying to find ways to do grassroots movements as an administrator versus it being top down. And it's something I've written in The Language of Behavior in that book is the relationship action teams, right? And that was created by just a few of us that were like-minded. And maybe we can talk about this too, is like, not feeling alone and finding, to Kim's point, our herd and how we found our herd. But that was how I found my herd on my campus because I was like, I can't be alone and feeling this way. Like, so if we're going to change the model of PD, let's create kind of a cohort model on our campus. And then, it started with 7 people and it ended with like 50 people by the end of the year because we had some things established as a core group of we're going to come in open-minded. We're going to keep our biases at the door. We're going to learn new things. We're going to implement them. If they work, keep them. And if they work, we're also going to share it with our teachers that are our neighbors or in our group, our grade level. And then we're going to invite them to the relationship action team, right? And so that's how it grew. And then it was like, again, Mitch, to that point of like that culture shift of we're just here to learn. We're here to grow. We're here to try new things and we're to get better. And if it fails, then we come to the group and we say it again, but we have that support. And that's similar to what, Kim, you've built, with your business too, of like just having like-minded folks to try new things. And then when it works, let's celebrate it. Let's continue it. Let's not just like drop it off the door, but let's like shout it from the mountaintops to the entire campus, to the entire district, say like, this is what other people should be doing too. So I think there's a way to do it where it's a part of the culture, but also like breaking down that identity piece to say like if we're here together as a team, then it doesn't matter and we don't have to be successful at every moment or every day. I think that's a misperception.
But you
Yeah.
do have to be successful sometimes. It can't
Sometimes.
just say it.
Yes.
If every time I stop by, it's not
Oh,
going
I
well.
suck today. I suck every day. No.
You
Can
do
I-
have to start though. You're inviting people to start. Like start, and I
Correct.
like always, I follow Seth Godin and I love when he says find the others.
Yep.
And so it's like find the others. And there are groups of people like-minded, like you said, Josh, in your school, in your community, but I would say globally on social through platforms that we're on, reaching
On
out
the
to
gram.
us.
On the
The
gram.
Gram. Yeah. Find the others. And then Mitch,
I'm on the
TikTok
gram.
too. TikTok too.
I'm barely on the gram. You know when I'm on the gram? When one of you guys posts something and I put it
I
on
know.
my story, which I don't even know what that means. I just put it
TJ,
on my
I don't
story.
either. Josh does that, and I'm like, oh, it's in my story, and there's a little arrow.
This
you
hurts my
click it, and it
heart,
says,
gentlemen.
Share to your story, and I'm like,
I'm slowly
okay, I'm
dying
gonna
as you're
share it
talking.
to my
I want you to do a whole session with me. I'm a learner. I want to learn Instagram. I'm still over here on Twitter. I still call it Twitter too, by the way.
I don't
I
want
still do too, actually.
to know about any of them. I'm not on TikTok, never have been, never will be. Mark my words.
Can I just share though? I posted TJ. Thankfully, Kim got this little clip of TJ speaking about PD on our last session. I posted on TikTok, and I've gotten a ton of engagement on it. And I even put someone put a comment that was talking about how it's sad how something so simple and something that should be just your typical procedures are not occurring. And I think that's so true as far as what we're talking about, like, especially our leaders, like just to do the same thing over and over again is just insanity to me. And
Yeah.
I hope if you're a leader and you're listening to the first episode and the second one, that you could take that into your thought process of like, what are some small changes that can be made in professional development? So TJ, you're getting a lot of engagement on platforms you have no idea even exist.
I'm on it, man. Maybe I
Oh,
need to do get
TJ?
on TikTok. I don't have the Facebooks either. But
Can I tell you why I try to? I'm pretty good on the gram now. I just put
You're getting better.
whatever.
Mitch.
I'm getting better. But you got to do these things when social came out, and it's like, oh, if you have a business, you got to like do this stuff. I'm like, okay. So I got an Instagram account and put a picture on there. And I was giving a professional, I was somewhere, maybe it was a conference I was speaking at or something. And of course, a younger teacher came up and I had put up at the end, hey, you can, contact me this way. Here's the website. And then here's the social handles. And she came up with her phone and she's like, you have one picture on Instagram from 3 years ago. And I was like, yeah, she was just like, why are you sharing your handle with?
yeah, you found me.
I'm
That's
better.
That's what I wanted you to get. Hey, Mitch, when you said that about the principal talking to you, like I used to go in and out of classrooms as an AP and principal, like all the time. I tried to do 4 to 6 a day with feedback
Nice.
every time. And something that we teach school leaders about, like frequent visits and non-intrusive feedback to support teachers and teacher development. But I used to not talk to the folks, right? I would almost like let them in, like while I'm saying something to the kids, like let them in and then like just open the door, like whatever, like you can come in, but I'm doing something in here that's important.
Totally.
And I think they liked that. I mean, I always liked that too. Whenever I went into a teacher's room,
You
and
don't
they
have
just
to fuss with me.
roll
Yeah.
with it. Like you don't need to come up and tell me what you're doing. I want to see what you're doing. Like I want to watch
Mhm.
you do it.
Totally.
And so I think that when we normalize that kind of culture too, it's really important. That's what breaks down the walls. Like we got to be in and out of these rooms, seeing each other as peers and as supervisors to know what's really going on for our learners. And maybe, by the way, take a day or half a day and just follow one kid around and see what it feels like to be in your school from class to class or from period of instruction to period of instruction. Those are all really good parts, I think, of what we're talking about here, which is this shift.
Mhm.
And I'm glad we brought up like finding small groups of people, because that was one of the AI generated questions that we didn't even get to. Our facilitator, ChatGPT.
I think I'm having like this moment. So you guys have to know, I'm very in tune with my feelings. And I become very, very aware of like things that people have been saying. And then I'm able to put them together in this beautiful little package. And honestly, what's happening right now for me is I'm going, wow, all of us stand for my 3 core beliefs, which is my book, Becoming the Bison, which is my keynote, which is everything that I preach and walk through with teachers. And it's the first thing. So, Mitch, your quote that you read, my first thing is teach social and emotional skills. Don't expect them. And that includes your executive functioning. It includes all of that because a lot of people don't even know what social emotional learning is. The second thing is be intentional so others notice. And it's not so that others notice. That's the byproduct. And truly, the action steps that you take, you're in control of what you want them to notice, how you want it to feel, that culture in across your campus, in your classroom, everything. And the last one is find your herd. It's your community. You're like-minded people. And that is everything that I stand for. And listening to you guys, I'm like, holy cow. It really is mind-blowing that we can be in 3 different areas across the country and be so like-minded and so connected and record ourselves and do a podcast and put this out there. And I just know that the people who listen, the ones that are very similar to us, kind of go, oh my gosh, yeah, that's the stuff that's missing for me. And professionally, personally. And so our hope, we were talking before, our hope is to continue, yes, these conversations, but also be able to connect more with all of you listening. So get ready, game on, big things are coming. And I hope to see so many of you guys at VIBE Edu on August 1st in Anaheim.